Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fanatic Breakdown Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Higgins, with all the latest NFL and NBA news. Speaking of the NFL, the season kicks off this Thursday. I'm so excited for another thrilling roller coaster of a season. With that said, let's go ahead and hop into the NFL news. Former Colts running back Marlon Mack, who signed with Houston this offseason, was released, locking up fourth-round pick Dameon Pierce as the number one running back in Houston. He showed flashes of greatness for the Texans in the preseason, so I think it's very possible he could end up being very, very good. The Philadelphia Eagles traded for defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson after releasing starting safety Anthony Harris. They gave up a 2023 fifth rounder and a 2024 sixth rounder. They in return received CGJ and a 2025 seventh rounder. At just 24, he is set to improve the secondary. Everybody knows the Eagles' offense got much better this offseason with the addition of A.J. Brown. That's a given. And if their defense performs, they could be scary. The Raiders traded corner Trayvon Mullen to the Cardinals for a conditional 7th-round pick. So their best corner right now is Rock Ya-Sin. And then Nate Hobbs, who I initially thought was actually off the roster because they cut him a little while back, but then they re-signed him because he got arrested. That 7th rounder could actually convert to a 6th rounder with decent play, but that's really not the point. The Raiders' secondary is less than stellar. Even with the Raiders having Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and Josh Jacobs, if their defense gives up tons of points, it's really going to be tough for the offense to win games. And personally, this is the next bit of news is a move that I'm actually not very fond of. The Jacksonville Jaguars traded wide receiver Laviska Shenault Jr. for a 2023 7th rounder and a 2024 6th rounder. I personally would have waited an extra year to see how Trevor Lawrence develops throwing-wise. We all know he's a pretty good runner, but kind of lackluster in the passing department last year. And given the fact Laviska is just 23 himself, he's still developing. And also, without Urban Meyer at head coach, they could kind of be decent without a coach that blames all of his struggles on his team, not him. So I personally believe that they shouldn't have done this, especially given the fact he was traded to the Panthers. And I don't know what they have with the Panthers because that's also who they traded C.J. Anderson to. So I'm not quite sure what they have going on there. But nonetheless, Laviska Shenault is off the Jags roster. The Los Angeles Chargers signed former Patriot, Ram, and Dolphin Sony Michel for some depth at the running back position. It's quite obvious that Austin Eckler will be the workhorse back. He's obviously not going to get the starting running back position for the Chargers, but it wouldn't surprise me if Michel ends up being the third down or short down back because he's solid and he's more of a power back than an elusive back anyway, so he could end up being a decent contributor to this Chargers offense. And just before I announce this next bit of news, it involves the Raiders, but I'm not quite sure what the Raiders are doing. They have made a lot of very questionable moves over the past few years, especially within the past week or so. But the Raiders waived 2021 17th overall pick lineman Alex Leatherwood. Shortly after he got cut, he was claimed by the offensive line needy Bears. It's possible he could start this season. It wouldn't really surprise me. But given the fact he was largely a disappointment in Las Vegas, I have no reason to believe he'll be any different in Chicago. This next bit is actually some news that I find quite ironic. The Philadelphia Eagles traded wide receiver Jalen Reagor to the Minnesota Vikings for a 2023 7th-round pick and a 2024 conditional 4th rounder that could actually downgrade with some bad stats to a 5th rounder. And I expect him to be probably the 3rd or 4th receiver on the roster behind Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Fun fact, Reagor was actually drafted with the 21st pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. His All-Pro teammate Justin Jefferson was drafted with the 22nd pick. While Reagor didn't live up to the hype his first few years, the guy drafted directly behind him is widely regarded as one of the best receivers in the league. And now they play together. I actually just found that kind of funny. I thought I'd put that out there. And Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson received a 5-year, $245 million contract extension. I think this is a good move for Denver, locking up their starting quarterback for 5 more years. Obviously, there's a guy they traded for on the offseason that they're very high on, with wide receivers like Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, so which are great passing options. I don't think they're nearly as good as the ones in Seattle, which were DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but they're both very, very good young players, and I think they can be very good for these next 5-6 years. So I think this is a good, very, very good move for the Broncos. All right, starting center for the Bucks, Ryan Jensen was placed on injured reserve and will miss a good chunk of the season due to a knee injury. I'm not exactly sure how much time he'll miss. I'm pretty sure the cap, or like the minimum for how long you have to be on the IR, is 8 weeks, I'm pretty sure. So he's going to miss a good amount of time. And it was due to a knee injury, and this is not exactly good news for the 45-year-old Tom Brady. The Buccaneers also re-signed defensive back Logan Ryan for 1 year, just over $1 million. He is a solid veteran presence on a cheap, short contract, which is team-friendly. And he gives some age to a young Bucs secondary with guys like Antoine Winfield, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Carlton Davis, as well as very young linebacker Devin White, with many more key defensive pieces under 25 years old. Running back Derrick Henry received a pay raise from the Titans. King Henry will receive an extra $2 million to make him the highest paid running back in the NFL, which, I mean, it's well-deserved. He's the workhorse of the Titans. He really does everything. It really is unfortunate he suffered such a catastrophic injury last year with how good he is. And now that they're missing both of their starting wide receivers from last year in Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, he's going to do even more now, which is crazy. With more Tennessee Titans news, Pro Bowl linebacker for the Titans, Harold Landry, has torn his ACL and is likely out for the entire season. I don't have much to say about this other than the fact it's really unfortunate for the Titans. It's a huge hit to an already weak defense. The Buffalo Bills released tight end O.J. Howard, and he later signed with the Houston Texans. And the team is basically just a wasteland for former first-round picks who never panned out, so my hopes for OJ aren't too high right now. Cardinals safety Jalen Thompson accepted a 3-year, $40 million contract extension. Thompson and Budda Baker form a great safety tandem on a great Cardinals defense, and I really do look forward to watching these guys play for years and years to come. They really are such a treat to watch. In the wake of Tyron Smith's injury, the Dallas Cowboys signed former Eagle Jason Peters to bolster the offensive line. The former All-Pro signed a 1-year, $1.75 million deal, and obviously he's going to be huge, especially for the success of this team while Tyron is out. They already have mainstays on the offensive line like Zach Martin, but they also lost Connor Williams, so they have lost a few key pieces of that offensive line. And with Tyron Smith being out, I didn't really have such high hopes for this team, but definitely Jason Peters will help them out a lot. Former Washington linebacker Ryan Kerrigan will join the Commanders as a defensive line coach. I like this move. It's a good move for the team because Kerrigan was very, very good. But a few years back, he had a very, very quick fall off. It was insane. He was one of the best linebackers in the league for many, many years. And then in 1-2 years, he completely disappeared and was a bench player. But I have zero doubt in my mind that he will be mega successful as a coach. Now I'm going to quickly move on to the NBA news. It's significantly less than the NFL news that I had today. But Knicks small forward R.J. Barrett signed an extension recently. It is a 4-year, $120 million contract. They really didn't want to give him an extension, and it is largely considered a disappointment, and I'll tell you why in a second. Markieff Morris, brother of Marcus Morris, signs a 1-year deal with the Brooklyn Nets. And sadly, he only played 17 out of 82 games with the Heat last year due to an injury. And that injury is well known among the community. He got blindsided by Nikola Jokic. But given the fact due his disappointing season last year, he's looking to rebound next season. No pun intended. All right, and this is you probably already know about this. I'll just say that. It's well known. Utah Jazz star Donovan Mitchell has been traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. In return, Utah got Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, and Ochai Agbaji, 3 first-rounders, and 2 pick swaps. Colin Sexton immediately signed a 4-year, $72 million extension. I think I I think the Cavs won this trade. They really didn't give up too much if you look at it. They gave up their first rounder from this year, which I don't really think they're going to be missing. And they got Donovan Mitchell for him. Colin Sexton, who was probably going to leave in free agency anyway, he actually was unsigned. And this is basically just a sign-and trade for Colin. And Lauri Markkanen, who's probably the biggest loss out of all of this because he was their starting small forward, power forward, whatever you want to call him. He does a little bit of both. But I think they got better because they're going to have Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen, which is an amazing team. Obviously, Lauri Markkanen isn't going to be in that starting lineup anymore. I don't know who's going to be starting as small forward with them, maybe Cedi Osman. But either way, that's definitely good. I think both teams definitely got something out of it. The three first rounders, obviously they have Danny Ainge at general manager, president of basketball operations, whatever you want to call him. He's the one who made that trade, and he got a decent amount. Obviously, Colin is great. Lauri Markkanen is also very good. Ochai, no one's really seen yet. And then those 3 first rounders are going to come in clutch, and then the 2 pick swaps, which they might not need because they're probably going to have better picks than Cleveland anyway. But either way, that's a very good return. So I think both teams won the trade, but I do believe Cleveland got a better return. And the reason the Knicks were disappointed is because they were the front runners in this trade, and they didn't want to give RJ Barrett an extension because, or not that they weren't interested, but they were probably going to give him an extension too. And the Knicks didn't want to give him an extension yet because they felt like that would have been a slap in the face to Utah, that they didn't want Donovan, which is exactly what happened. He got traded, they extended him. But many Knicks fans would have preferred having Donovan Mitchell here, and they ended up not getting him and just having to re-sign RJ Barrett, who they're not certain is going to be the long-term answer for New York. But nonetheless, an amazing move for both Utah and Cleveland. The main losers in this situation would be New York Knicks. And I would like to put out a quick apology. I said Danilo Gallinari actually avoided any ACL damage, but it later came out the next week, or this past week, whatever you want to call it, I don't really remember when it was, that Danilo Gallinari actually did tear his ACL. I was wrong. It was previously thought that he was unharmed in the ACL area, but this means he is out for significantly longer, and I'd prefer not to think about this, so I'm just going to end it about here. I'm not too happy as a Celtics fan. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week as always, and I'll get to cover the first week of NFL games. I'm so excited. Make sure to join my Discord, and if you are listening on YouTube, make sure to comment if I missed anything. With that said, I'm your host Chris Higgins, and this has been Fanatic Breakdown.